Okay, we've got version 3.2 release notes review. So overall, it's hard to pick a standout feature for me in this one. They're all generally fairly helpful and going to be much sought after. So I'll just jump straight into it. So the first one off the ranks here, we've got custom module items inheriting the default settings, either with import or creation from the front end. So previously, if you were to set some defaults like the secure zone, so if we're in a custom module, let's just look at teams, and you're in the settings, where if you set a secure zone to be like the default, so when an item's created, it's going to be automatically applied to that secure zone. That's now honored when you import items. They'll get that default setting applied, and if they're created on the front end, they'll have that applied. Same with the item properties for the default template and the include for site search. So under item properties, in the default properties, you've got a template you can set, and where was it? The disable all items from site search. So those settings will be honored. So that was a fairly sought after one in the forums. And then the release notes here just go through the system flow of how that all works, so you can read through that, get a better understanding of that. Then we had the date time was basically corrected for the time zone that your site was set to. So previously, I think they were all based off US, but so now all your sites, if you use any date-based liquid code, it will all be based on the actual time zone of that instance that you've set up, which is obviously very important. One thing I did notice with this is it's not currently applying to already existing sites. This is only happening when you create a new instance. The time zone is saved against that instance. So I assume that's for backwards compatibility. Obviously, if people have created workarounds in Liquid for the date issue, then that's going to break if they fix it. So in existing sites, so maybe there'll have to be some sort of extra care done to implement that for existing sites. Not sure yet. We'll see how that turns out. Then we've got the site search index rebuild function. So you'll see up in the very top banner here, got the rebuild index. So previously there was a issue where if new items or any items that were edited, they'd sort of fall out of the site index for the site search function. So now we just have a way to push everything back into the indexing to get those things found again. And we've got the global show this page for search engine button. So under the SEO settings, we now can see these two buttons, so we can like globally enable all items to be shown for search engines under the SEO section of each, like a page or a module. We can globally turn everything on, and likewise we can globally disable everything. Then we had added subscriptions tab to the event items. So similar to how you might view the subscriptions in the CRM, I think that's pretty much now you can sort of view those in the event section as well. So under events, yeah, so if you go into the event that you've created, there's a subscriptions tab now, so you can just see basically the subscribers to that event. And then we had events in secure zones. So basically we can just add events to secure zones now. So just quickly under secure zones, when you select your content that you want secured, events and event groups are now included there. So which you can then now create secured events. And we had add events links, or add event links to the menu link widget. So when you're creating a menu and you're using the let's just go here. The sort of the link widget here, or link manager. We can now choose again from event groups or events to select the URL for that. So very handy. We've had some adjustments to the restore password activate account token. So basically the length of time that lasts. So when you use the reset password email, it used to have a lifetime of 30 minutes before that token would expire and no longer be used to reset a password. So now it's 24 hours. So that's going to resolve a lot of issues with resetting customer passwords and whatnot. We had a file creation bug. So during a copy of a page, so I didn't experience this issue, but if you're copying a page, you get an error that it didn't create the file, the page file wasn't created, so now that's fixed. Add search form to Components Manager with the search by Treepl events fields. So this is basically just an events focused search form is now added to the component manager. So let's say we're on a page and we want to insert a list of events, or want to insert a search for events. Under events, we now have search forms. So similar to what we have for custom modules. So we have our search forms, which include all the fields of the module that you select. So we can do more customized searching. We have that now for events. So when you add the form code and the component, we can actually do filtering based on the specific events, fields for events, like the what's listed here in the release notes, so the price and the event start date, end date, all that sort of stuff. So you can build some filtering capabilities there on to filter based on when an event is or how much capacity is left, that sort of thing. So that should be pretty powerful to use. Okay. And then we've got implementation of Emmet in the ACE editor. So this is really cool for people who are coding in the editor. So just a quick demo of this. A lot of you probably used it, but it's often found in code editors. So that's a plugin. So you can do things like just type a P and then press tab, and that will expand it into a paragraph element. And there's some examples here in the release notes of other things you can do. Also a little link to like a playground for using Emmet specifically within the ACE editor environment. So you can have a play in there. And then there's external documentation for Emmet itself, so you can really dig in and see what all the syntax is for using that. So that's a really cool addition. Then we've got collapse or pre-collapse content boxes, so or collapse and expand content boxes. So like we're seeing here, any sort of grouped area of fields we can now collapse. Pretty much applies in most sections. So in the content modules, we can sort of collapse up those areas, the custom properties, collapse them all up. Just makes it a bit more comfortable to work in. That's good. Then we had rename the SEO title to meta title just for consistency and accuracy. So under the SEO tab of any item, it used to say SEO title, and this was meta description. Now they're both meta related. Then we've got WYSIWYG image and link titles, so the ability to set titles for links and alt text for images inside the WYSIWYG. So yeah, just as you add content to the WYSIWYG, you can have a little widget box pop up to allow editing those extra details. Extend meta description symbols limitation. So again, in the SEO section, in the description box, we now have a limit of 1,000. So yeah, my original thoughts on when this was implemented, I thought it was good that this was like sort of a guide for customers to enter in like the recommended SEO character limit for title and description. But this seems to have increased a few times. So I'm not sure if that's sort of an accurate way to look at it now. So I'm not really sure if these limits are a good thing or not, but I'd like to see here some recommended limitations, especially for if clients are coming in here editing this, they're not necessarily going to know what the best practice is. But then again, that might change. So, that's just my thoughts. Then we had inactive state for module items. So display an inactive state on any items in the list or tree view based on its date. So whether the release date or expiry dates are causing that item to be disabled or not. And this is pretty cool. Let's do a little test here. So if you disable an item, save that, go back to the list view, you see the little eye, which we're used to seeing that now. But if let's re-enable that, just save that, and in the list view it's gone, obviously. But if you have a release date that's, let's say, in the future, and save that, go to the list view, we now see an icon saying that it's inactive. But the cool thing I wanted to show was that if you disable it as well, and go to the list view, we actually see both icons, which is cool because it tells you that it's both disabled and inactive because they're two different states. So I thought that was worth mentioning. Then we have the WYSIWYG URL browser for links. So added the ability to choose URLs for links. So for built-in modules, pages, blogs, etc., and custom modules, documents like in the file manager, and obviously an external URL. So we can just quickly check that out. So if we were to create a link here, our little link manager here now has all these things to choose from, obviously. So the documents is our file manager, and all the modules that we have on that site. So very handy for the end user, obviously. Then there's been some improvements to page load time for liquid rendering. So that's pretty cool. And a rollback to some overridden parameters in modules. So you can read through this a bit more, but I think in the case where you're nesting modules inside of a list view of another module, if you're using custom parameters, like custom parameters in the module tag or the component tag, they will overriding the nested one if you're using the same custom parameter. So, but apparently that's fixed and doesn't flow through to override that parameter or variable. And then there was some issue in the so we're onto the bug fixes now. So there was an issue in the ACE editor, which was cutting up some JavaScript content. So there's an example here on what would happen with certain types of JavaScript content. So that's fixed. Allow created sites under the trialsite.co domain. So we originally had that feature and it broke for a little while there. Now that's back again and working. I have tested that, it does work. So that's very, very good news for all the white labelers. Then we had an empty Google Analytics code showing if you didn't have even if you didn't have the Google tracking ID in place. So if you weren't using Google Analytics, you didn't have that tracking ID set into the admin, I think the code was still being rendered out onto the site. So obviously cleared that up so that doesn't happen. And just a rollback for the numbers, the number filter, for the liquid filter that had accidentally been removed. So that's back again. And allow event start date to be set in the past. So before we couldn't set the event to start in the past. Now we can set that date to a previous date. Okay, so that's the 3.2 release notes. Thank you.